Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Pallava Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Pallava Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Pallava Girivaradari. Jasodanandana Brajanjana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajanjana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yasodanandana Brajanjana Ranjana. Yasodanandana Brajanjana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 13, text 47. Mother Ramburu, you were here last time when Sajani gave class, right? You remember that verse? It was at 45 from what I saw in the... So 46 was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. I don't think they read that. But anyway, that's what we will read 46. It's connected, so we can read both. So text 46 reads, Maitreya uvacha iti upashtiyamanaso munivir brahma vadivihi salile swa kurakranta upadatta vitavanim. Translation. The sage Maitreya said, the Lord, being thus worshipped by all the great sages and transcendentalists, touched the earth with his hoofs and placed it on the water. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The earth was placed on the water by his inconceivable potency. The Lord is all-powerful, and therefore he can sustain the huge planets either on the water or in the air, as he likes. The tiny human brain cannot conceive how these potencies of the Lord can act. Man can give some vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible. But actually the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. Yet the frog philosophers still try to give some imaginary explanation. So now we will read text 47. Please repeat. Saitam Bhagavan Urvim. Saitam Bhagavan Urvim. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Rasaya Lila Jonitam. Rasaya Lila Jonitam. Apsunya Shajaya Harihi. Apsunya Shajayo Harihi. Saitam Bhagavam Urvim. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Rasaya Lila Jonitam. Apsunya Sajayo Harihi. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Ladies. Saitam Bhagavan Urvim. Vishwakshena Prajapatihi. Saha He Itam, in this manner, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Urvim, the earth, Vishwakshenaha, another name of Vishnu, Prajapati, the Lord of the living entities, Rasayaha, from within the water, Lilaya, very easily, Unnitan, raised, Abshu, on the water, Nyasya, placing, Jayo, returned to his own abode, Harihi, the personality of Godhead. Translation, please repeat. In this manner, the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the maintainer of all living entities, raised the earth from within the water, and having placed it afloat on the water, he returned to his own abode. In this manner, the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the maintainer of all living entities, raised the earth from within the water, and having placed it afloat on the water, he returned to his own abode. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, descends by his will to the material planets in his innumerable incarnations for particular purposes. And again, he goes back to his own abode. When he descends, he's called an avatara, because avatara means one who descends. Neither the Lord himself nor his specific devotees who come to this earth are ordinary living entities like us. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyanandjana Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Irvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Veshata. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam famgunamagati hirim jatkripatamahan bande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Caitanya Ishwara. So in this particular section, this whole chapter, it's called The Appearance of Lord Varaha. And Srila Prabhupada, if I'm not mistaken, at least we have the recording of maybe 2 or 3 of those appearances. And whenever Srila Prabhupada spoke about the appearance of the Lord, he basically emphasized the same points that Krishna explains when he talks about his appearance in the Bhagavad Gita. And we find this in chapter 4, where for the first time, after he has spoken to Arjuna about his lamentation and the causes of it and his identity, meaning Arjuna's identity and the living entities, real identity, and what they have to do and how they have to operate within the world. After that, he makes a very short entrance into the description or the narration of the Bhagavad Gita. And in chapter 4, he starts talking about himself for the first time for a few verses, not so much in detail as it will happen in the 7th chapter, where is his part, his section. the first section of the Gita, the first 6 chapters, is all, shall we say, focus on the living entity and how the living entity can achieve perfection. First, we find the lamentation of Arjuna. Then Krishna tells him the reason of his lamentation is because he's identifying with the body. And then in chapter 3, he tells him what he should be doing, his true dharma, right? Because Arjuna presents some arguments to Krishna in the second half of the first chapter of the Gita. And he says, because of these dharmas, this is not good to do, right? That was the dilemma. And then he mentions the word dharma several times. And just to make emphasis on the purpose of the whole Bhagavad Gita and the purpose of Krishna appearing is to establish dharma. Dharma samstapanartaya, he says. Right? I come here to establish dharma. So the whole Bhagavad Gita is the whole discussion of the Bhagavad Gita is based on what is dharma, how to apply dharma. That, right? That's the whole thing. I mean, we can see that the very first verse of the Gita, which is the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, Dharma Chetra Kuruchetra. And what we say the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita? Sarva Dharma Paritaya. So you see the word dharma here, dharma there. So the main question is, what is dharma? Right? And what is dharma in essence, as also it is explained in the Shastra, Dharman tu shakshat bhagavat pranintam. That dharma is what the Lord established. That's it, right? And when you go to a court case, or to the court, and then you see when the judge comes in, everybody stands up. Yeah? Nobody boxes at that. If you don't stand up, you are held in contempt, right? Why? Because you're disrespecting who's establishing the law right there, correct? That's how it is. In other countries, like in Thailand and Indonesia, as far as I know, you cannot even stand up at the same height of the judge. You have to sort of kneel like that, to respect. But whenever we present the authority of the Lord, of the supremacy of the Lord, people say, "Oh, you are fanatics. Why do you have to bow down?" So what about in the courtroom? Right? You have to show respect, is it? So back to the Bhagavad Gita, and the purpose of Krishna appearing is to establish dharma, to establish the law. And when the judge says something, and then he hits the hammer on the thing that he has, that's it. That means after this, no more arguments. The arguments are over. So Arjuna presents some arguments based on dharma. And he uses the word dharma several times. I think we counted 5 or 6 times. And then he uses Kula Dharma. And interestingly, Arjuna says Kula Dharma Sanatana, right? Like eternal family traditions, right? And then he Jati Dharma, Kula Dharma, like that. Yeah. So several times this word it's used. Sometimes the word dharma is misused. Dharma is like the word yoga. Sometimes it's misused. Yoga this, yoga that, this and that. So all these words are sometimes misused, misunderstood. And as Prabhupada, I was hearing a class about the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appearance, and Bhakti Vikash Maharaj was explaining that one of the words that sometimes Prabhupada will use words from all English, or sometimes make up words, and these words get like established into our language or vocabulary. And he was emphasizing that Prabhupada sometimes will refer to some of the things that people say about some of these concepts, like malinterpretations. No misinterpretation, which could imply that it's a mistake. So I don't know how to use it. But malinterpreted. So that means there is maliciousness when we use this word. So sometimes the word dharma, it is malinterpreted. So, okay, this is my dharma, so I should do this, and this is my tradition, therefore I should or I shouldn't do this or that. But Krishna appears to establish what is dharma. He is the judge. He is the supreme person. So in the Bhagavad Gita, he establishes that. And in regards of his appearance, like I was mentioning, that every time Srila Prabhupada spoke about the appearance of Varaha, Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, and other appearances that we have the recordings of, he mentions these verses. And Krishna is focusing the spotlight on Arjuna in the beginning of the Gita. But then he makes a little, like sometimes the curtains close and then they are not closed properly, and then still the devotees are having a bit of a darshan, or sometimes accidentally one of the pujaris walks by and the curtain gets caught, and then they open it and everyone's like it's going to be a festival or something. Everyone's waiting with expectation for the curtains to open. So he makes a little entrance there in chapter 4, where he's telling Arjuna, actually, I am in other words, I'm just paraphrasing, I'm the teacher of the sun god. You see, everybody sees the sun, right? And he says, I taught him about this science. And he taught to the father of humankind. And he continued to teach to kings, the great kings of the world. And Arjuna is scratching his head and he's thinking, okay, but how come you taught him when he's senior than you? Right? That's what he asked him in the beginning of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Correct? That's the question. And one may think, and Prabhupada explains that in the purports, that actually Arjuna knew all these things, but somehow he's put into illusion or confusion just for the sake of the drama. Like sometimes when you do a drama and then you have your part, you have your script, and then you have to do something, right? And generally somebody's directing and they are telling you, no, don't do it like that. Just act, scared or whatever. The emotion it's required for that part of the drama. So Krishna sort of manifests himself in the beginning of chapter 4. And when Arjuna asked him, how come you taught, Manu and Vivaswan when they are senior to you by birth, he says. So what is that Arjuna saying there? What Arjuna is saying, and Prabhupada explains this quite nicely in those sections, purport, that Arjuna is like we may do, like the living entities may do. He is seeing Krishna, like Prabhupada. Who remembers how Prabhupada says at the end of this purport? Anybody remembers very nicely how Prabhupada says, like us? He says, neither the Lord himself nor his specific devotees who come to this earth are ordinary living entities like us. So that's the whole scene of the beginning of chapter 4. Arjuna is talking to Krishna as if Krishna would be an ordinary living entity like us, but just like what Prabhupada ends the purport here. So he's asking him that. If you are, we are. Come on, we sleep together sometimes. We goof around. We wrestle or we joke and things like that. You're just like me, right? That's the misconception that Arjuna is having due to the influence of the illusory energy of Krishna, personal energy of Krishna, and Krishna starts making a differentiation at that point in the Bhagavad Gita. No, we may be friends, we are not the same, right? And then he tells them that the famous verse that we have been together in many lifetimes, in many instances before, but there's a difference. I remember and you don't. right? And it's something similar to the pastime of King Prachinavarishat that is presented in the Bhagavatam, when actually the story is the story of King Puranjana, but it's told to Prachinavarishat in the Bhagavatam by Narada Muni. And Narada Muni tells the story. It's quite telling story, because he's giving instructions to the king Prachinavarishat. That was kind of an illusion, Maya, right? And Narada Muni is telling the story of some king in the past, Puranjana. Puranjana means ancient or something, antiquity, right? Some ancient king once upon a time, and he did this and he did that and he fell for this, for that, and he was confused about so many things. But after many narrations and chapters, then the conclusion is the story of Puranjana is the story of him. So it's like I'm talking, oh, there was once upon a time some bhakta called something that I met 20 years ago, da da da. And then I said, actually, that bhakta, it's Bhakta Lucas. It's about you. So he, at the end of the story, he tells him, actually, it's you. It's not someone else. But for the sake of being able to take it, because sometimes it's hard when people tells us things straight to us. So Narada Muni tells us a story, and he says, actually, and then Krishna is talking in the story. And then Krishna says, according to Narada Muni, you have left me. He tells in the Puranjana story. Krishna tells the living entity, you left me. You didn't want to be with me. Huh? So in the same way, Krishna is telling Arjuna, says, you are thinking that I am the same like you, but we are not the same. I am superior. I remember everything. I know everyone, but hardly anybody knows me. So there is a difference. Krishna is supreme, and we are limited, right? So in this pastime of Lord Varaha, this is something that Prabhupada is emphasizing in his purport. And he says in the previous verse, in the purport of the previous verse, he says that men can give some vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible. He's referring to gravity. At this point, if we think we are floating, right? This planet is floating. We don't realize that. How is it floating? How is it floating? But this planet is floating, and the sun is floating, and the moon is floating, and other stars and planets are floating. Why are they floating? And that's what the scientists, what word Prabhupada used, in their impudency, they're impudent, and they try to conceive, this is how Krishna is doing, and then they give different theories. Right, for this, for that, so many theories. So Prabhupada refers to that, and he says, can give vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible. But actually, the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. Right? So that's the point that Prabhupada is making, that we cannot conceive Krishna. That word it's in Sanskrit, achintya. Achintya. We cannot. Chintya means you can think. Achintya means you cannot, conceive that. Yet the frog philosophers still try to give some imaginary explanations. Right? So that is the line of Prabhupada in this purpose. That Krishna comes from above. He's descending. That's why he names here the term avatara. means one who descends. Neither the Lord himself nor his specific devotees who come to this earth are ordinary living entities like us. So, in order for us to understand Lord Varaha's pastime and any other pastime, we need to follow Prabhupada's guidance in this regard. And as I was mentioning, that's what he generally resorts to describe the first chapters of the first verses of chapter 4, from text 5 onwards. And he says, Krishna says, the personality of God had said, many, many births, both of you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot all subdue it of the enemy. Anybody remembers your previous birth? Huh? Some people claim to remember. There are some studies. What's that scientist, famous, I don't know, psychologist, psychiatrist or something? Stevenson, I think his name was. Ian Stevenson, yes. And he made, I don't know, 200, 250 or whatever cases of people who were able to remember previous lives. And then he, I mean, I don't know if all of them, but I don't think he would have had the budget in those days to test all that. So people would go to places that these individuals would claim that they were born, and they will describe details of those places. And I live in this house, and there were these many rooms, and we used to play here and there. And sometimes these people were never there, right? And the purpose of his study was to prove that actually sometimes people remember previous lives. This Ian Stevenson, famous. But in any case, that may have been one, if it happens for some reason. Prabhupada also in the teachings of Lord Kapila explains that sometimes by good fortune we're able to remember some experiences of previous lives while we are about to be born, right? And the embryo, the fetus, is sometimes in the praying position. There's a picture, I don't know if it's still used by the BBT, I remember many years back, and then there's a picture or a drawing, and the fetus is like this praying, and the praying is there, the prayer is there at the bottom in the plate. And he says, I have forgotten my relationship with you, but I pray that in this lifetime I don't forget you anymore. Like, So, and Prabhupada explains in those purports that that's because of good fortune, that we're able to remember that we have suffered again and again. And the illusion in this life is that we forget. We forget. And you know when it's a time when you sort of remember? I don't know. When do you remember that you have suffered so many times? Anyone? When do you remember that you have suffered many, many times? Maybe not exactly, but you have a feeling that, yeah, it's enough. Anyone? Fatigue, emotional fatigue, yeah. But when does that happen? Prabhupada mentions sometimes. Every day. Well, that's advanced. When you're in pain, right? When you're in pain. Depends, physical pain, emotional pain, Yeah, so that has been my experience for the last few weeks because of my injury and then cough and so many, So you're in pain. So I went to an ER, and I was telling my wife, I said, what they can do is just give me some painkillers, that's all. And sure enough, after a little while, a young doctor came out and he was trying to, convince me to take, what's it called? ISKCON or one of those. Oh, that's a heavy one. And I was thinking, But anyway, I just went along and took it with me, but I didn't take it. I took something that it's not too heavy. But then you realize, I'm in pain. I don't want this anymore. It's not a pleasant thing, So Arjuna is asking Krishna, we are the same. How come you taught him? And how is it possible? And then is when Krishna kind of opened his disguise, as if he would be an ordinary person. And then he brings the famous appearance verses that we find in the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada, as I was saying, often quotes this, and it goes, Ajopi sam abhyayadma bhutanam ishwaropi sam prakritim swam adhistaya sambhavami atmamayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy, I still appeared in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Right? And then he gives a number of verses in regards to his appearance. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata adbhutanam adharmasya tadadvana srijami aham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. And then he gives the purpose of his appearance. Paritranaya sadunam vinasaya chaduskritam dharmasam stapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. And then finally, just to seal that section of that set of verses, the famous one, Janma karma chame divyam evam joveti tattvataha tyaktva deha punar janma naeti mam eti swarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attain my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So the purpose of his appearances is that sometime in the future, we will be discussing about that appearance. So he appears so many thousands, if not millions of years after, somebody will be discussing that appearance. And by that discussion, we are transferred to the spiritual world. What a genius. Imagine. Huh? This is incredible. This is amazing how Krishna does that. And towards the end of this chapter, I think it's the Shruti Fal, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, we're almost close to it. He says, okay, it's in the very next verse, I think. Okay, text 48, he says, if one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of Lord Bore, which is worthy of description, the Lord, who's within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. So by doing this narration, right, and discussing it, Krishna, who is in our hearts, is very pleased. That's Bhagavatam. And the verses continue. It says, nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord himself, who's seated in everyone's heart. You notice how, again, it's repeated. Krishna is with us. He's not someplace far, far away. He's with us, like in the Puranjana stories also. And then the last verse of this chapter. Who other than one who's not a human being, that's a way of saying an animal, can exist in this world and not be interested in the ultimate goal of life, right? Who can refuse the nectar of narrations about the personality of Godhead's activities, which by itself can deliver one from all material pangs? Sorry. So, what are the lessons from this pastime and from this purpose? One, as mentioned by Prabhupada in the previous purport, that the Lord's activities are inconceivable. So we cannot come up with it. I mean, some people say, oh, Bhagavatam is made up narration, some, myths and mythology, they say, right? It's just a made up thing. Somebody got inspired and started writing all these things. So that's one. And the other message that Srila Prabhupada makes and gives us in the purport from today's birth, the 47, right? He says, the Lord himself, nor his specific devotees who come to this earth, are ordinary living entities like us. So those are the two messages that Prabhupada gives us in the last two purports. And this is the appearance of Lord Barah. Any points, any questions so far? Anything? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Iksvaku. So we're ordinary living entities, unlike the people who come down to this, for these pastimes, but then through devotional service and when we get liberated, we go back to the spiritual world. Does that mean then we're actually the same as these people spiritually?
Yes and no. Prabhupada explains that there are different kinds of siddhas. So you have sadhana siddha, you have kripa siddha, you have nitya siddha, like that. So he explains that sometimes out of compassion, someone who is a nitya siddha may almost force you to become perfect. Right? So one time he was in Vrindavan and he was explaining this point, and the room was packed with devotees and guests like that. Prabhupada had an open door policy. So he was explaining this point, Siddha, what happens when we achieve perfection? Nitya Siddha versus Kripa Siddha and all that. He was talking about particularly Kripa Siddha. So at that point, one of his servants or secretaries came in to inform him something, that he had to do something, some people are coming, or at some point something. So he came and he whispered, I don't know if it was Gargamuni or someone at that, some close assistant at that point. And then Prabhupada made the motion, like when in the old days you have the bag of gold coins, and you have a bag like that, Generally, sometimes you find that icon or that drawing that the money is there, right? So when the devotee Prabhupada went like, huh? So it tricked him. So again, the devotee came close to him. So Prabhupada grabbed like this, and then he pushed him like this with his two fists. He pushed him like this, and then the devotee naturally just protected himself and just went like, and everyone sort of started giggling, because they could see what Prabhupada was made, and then the devotee stopped like that. And he says, "Take," and then he was so confused, and then again he stopped, and then he said, "You see, Kripa Siddha." He's being forced to take the mercy, but he doesn't want to take. And then he's like looking and confused. And then again he says, "Take," and then he sort of he went with it and then just grabbed it. And he says, "Okay, so now he's Kripa Siddha." So then Prabhupada explains that once you're Siddha, who cares? Sadhana or something Siddha or Kripa Siddha or Nitya Siddha, it becomes the same. So at some point, that doesn't matter anymore. And I know there are devotees who get caught up in this, that, the other. When Prabhupada said, don't get too caught up in that. There's a whole thing about where do we come from, and Prabhupada says, generally, we came from Krishna. He gives different quotes, and then devotees get like, no, but we come from here or there or here or there, and this Swami said this, and this Acharya said that, and that word means this, and therefore, anyway. So it's like a whole thing. And Prabhupada explains quite clearly that it's unnecessary, because that is not the problem. The problem is that we are in this material world, and this material world is on fire. Samsaradhava nalalida loka. We're burning like a bushfire. I don't know if you've seen those videos sometimes of different societies that they ask for money or help or something, and then you see these koalas burning, when the bushfires are there. It's a horrible thing, So it's like, then they rescue them and the whole thing. And so it's like that, we are burning, although we don't see it. The illusion is that we're thinking, it's not too bad. As soon as my pain goes away, then I'm thinking, oh, nice day. Maybe I can go to the beach and have some ice cream or something, take it easy. Right? That's what, isn't it? That's me. I'm saying that's me. I guilty of all charges. So it's good, and I tell my wife, oh yeah, let's go, and so that's the illusion. That's the illusion. But for the great devotees, advanced devotees, they see people are burning, and we have to hurry up. And Prabhupada came, and that was his mood. No more. And then he's saying in one of the Vyasapuya lectures of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, sometimes he would say things that, 1968, devotees didn't really know what was going on, but he was just talking big philosophy and sharing this, and then he said that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he came to bring the message of Godhead, and he was a Vaikuntha man, many of the people in the audience wouldn't even have known what Vaikuntha meant at that time, So, but that was his intensity. And he says, my only regret is that I didn't do it early. That's my only regret. That I should have done this earlier, because I can see that there is the need, and by Prabhupada's potency, as soon as he came to, or right after, a few months after he arrived in the States, so many devotees were following him. So many people were just attracted to him, right? So, to address your question, once we are liberated, that's it, And sometimes the example, I may have heard this by someone. It's like, we have these situations where people who are in jail, and then by something, generally that's the source of a story or a book or a movie, and then some young lawyer or a group of them, they set themselves to get this person proven innocent and overturn their conviction like that. And there's a whole drama, and then finally the person actually is proven to be free, right? To be innocent. And then the courts say, okay, now you can go. So once you're out, you're out. It's not like, okay, but actually, no. Once you're out of that prison environment, what do you want to do? You don't want to stand out there and just spaced out. What do you want to do? If you are let out of the prison, what do you do? Just think in real terms. What would you do? Where would you go? Whom would you seek? Family. Exactly. Back home, back to Godhead. So you're out, and then you just stand there, tripping, floating, thinking, oh, wow. So no, okay, maybe for a little while. It's like, oh, it's nice not to be, there. But then you look for where you came from. That's why, that's Bhagavad Gita. Who are you? Your identity. Where do you come from? your source, that's the middle section, and how to get out. Those are the 3 sections of the Bhagavad Gita. So once you're out, once you become a Siddha, that's it. Enjoy life, as Prabhupada says. Enjoy life. Go and dance with Krishna, serve him this way, whatever position you go back to. And then that's it. Life as it is continues to be in the true sense. No more of this. That's why Krishna says, Naeti mameti Sarjuna. Naeti, not this. Mameti. You come with me. So that's the purpose. And we have to be conscious of these things. And yes, there are many, as you can see, I didn't describe anything practically of the pastime in itself, but I just tried to go to some of the philosophical points that Krishna presents in the Bhagavad Gita, why he appears, right, and the result of hearing about those appearances, right, and what is Prabhupada teaching us in this purpose. Because otherwise it just becomes like a Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his book Bhagavat Arka Marichimala that otherwise the Bhagavatam becomes a source of entertainment. Oh, I know this verse, I know this pastime, I know this detail, and it's good, it's there. But interestingly, the Bhagavatam says, one who hears and describes in a devotional service attitude. Prabhupada is very clever how in a devotional service attitude. So my intention is not to simply, enjoy the narration or the pastime, but in a devotional service attitude. Sometimes some devotees were asking Prabhupada different questions about death. Prabhupada, what would happen if this, dying, this, that? So many death-related questions. And Prabhupada says, why you're so bothered about death? After you die, so-called die, you continue doing the same thing that you are doing now. So for the devotee, and then he quoted that verse, I always forget, Chiranjiva or something, but that for a devotee there is no death. So if we are really, really, really committed to the devotional service, to the process of devotional service, we don't die. So the moment that the body stops functioning, we just continue doing my service, doing garlands or preaching or reading or serving somehow. So that is perfection. That's true perfection. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gantaraj Bhagavatam ki, Jai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.